or ask me if I've ever been in love. Tell me how your planet Vulcan looks on a lazy evening when the moon is full.
Back in 1967, Star Trek. The original series was barely surviving. Reviews were mixed, the cast felt uncertain, and behind the scenes, Nichelle Nichols had already made a decision that could have changed television history forever. Despite becoming one of the most groundbreaking faces on screen, she was quietly preparing to walk away after just one season. But before she could leave, one unexpected encounter stopped her in her tracks. A conversation so powerful that it completely changed the future of Star Trek, and ultimately, her entire legacy. The woman who changed Star Trek. In 1966, Nichols landed the role that would go on to define her legacy. Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, the original series. And funny enough, there was a strange bit of coincidence tied to the name. When she walked into her audition for Star Trek, she happened to be carrying a best-selling book called Uhuru, a novel of Africa today. Years later, during an interview with the Archive of American Television, Nichols explained that Uhuru is the Swahili word for freedom. That detail instantly caught Roddenberry's attention. At the time, her character hadn't even been fully developed yet, but Roddenberry loved the name Uhuru for the role. Nichols then suggested slightly modifying it to Uhura, and Roddenberry immediately embraced the idea, telling her the character belonged to her. But Nichols didn't stop at simply helping create the name. She personally crafted much of Uhura's backstory herself. She imagined the character coming from a family filled with ambassadors and scientists, which gave Uhura a sense of intelligence, prestige, and responsibility. Nichols even decided that Spock would serve as Uhura's mentor, adding another layer to the character's identity. Behind the scenes, Roddenberry reportedly kept his producers largely unaware that Nichols had been cast in such an important supporting role. According to Nichols, when producers finally saw her appearing prominently in early episodes, they confronted Roddenberry about the decision, but Roddenberry refused to back down. When Star Trek, the original series, first hit the airwaves, viewers met Nichelle Nichols as Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, the calm, intelligent communications officer stationed right on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. Looking at the character today, it can be easy to miss just how revolutionary that role really was. But during the 1960s, American television barely gave Black women meaningful representation at all. Most roles available to them were still built around harmful stereotypes, usually limiting Black actresses to playing maids, servants, or background characters with little importance to the story. Uhura shattered that mold. For many viewers, simply seeing a Black woman portrayed as highly educated, respected, and essential to the mission of a futuristic starship felt almost unbelievable. Whoopi Goldberg would later describe the impact of Uhura as earth-shattering, explaining that the character finally gave Black women a visible place in the future. Technically, Uhura was not the very first Black woman to appear in science fiction. Earlier films had featured Black actresses in the genre, including the 1940 movie Son of Ingagi, which included a Black female scientist named Dr. Helen Jackson. But those examples were rare, and most Black women in science fiction stories were still pushed into small, subservient roles. What made Star Trek different was its reach. This was not some obscure movie hidden away in theaters. It was network television. Every week, families across America welcomed the Enterprise directly into their living rooms. And right there beside Captain Kirk and Spock stood Uhura, confident and fully respected as part of the crew. Even her name carried meaning. The name Uhura came from the Swahili word uhuru, meaning freedom, while Nyota translated to star. Together, the character's name subtly reflected the spirit of hope and progress that sat at the heart of Star Trek's vision of the future. It did not take long for audiences to embrace her. Uhura quickly became one of the show's most beloved characters, and Nichelle Nichols suddenly found herself thrust into national fame. By 1967, she had already appeared on the cover of Ebony, one of the most influential magazines in Black America at the time. The timing of that recognition mattered. Star Trek arrived during one of the most turbulent periods in American history, right in the middle of the Civil Rights Movement. Racial violence, segregation, and discrimination still shaped everyday life across much of the country. Against that backdrop, Nichols's presence on television became something far bigger than entertainment. For countless young viewers, especially young black girls, Uhura represented possibility. And then came the moment that cemented Star Trek's place in television history. In 1968, during the episode Plato's Stepchildren, Nichelle Nichols and William Shatner shared what is widely remembered as the first interracial kiss between a black woman and a white man on American television. The actual storyline surrounding the scene was completely wild, even by Star Trek standards. A group of aliens with telekinetic powers forced members of the Enterprise crew to perform humiliating acts against their will, making them sing, dance, and eventually kiss. Under that mind control, Captain Kirk and Uhura were compelled to embrace despite desperately resisting it. It was not framed as some sweeping romantic moment. In fact, both characters clearly fought against it. But none of that changed how explosive the scene felt in 1968. To really understand the tension surrounding it, it helps to remember what America looked like at the time. The episode aired just 1 year after the Supreme Court's landmark Loving v. Virginia decision, which struck down laws banning interracial marriage. Even then, public opinion remained deeply divided, with polls showing that most Americans still disapproved of interracial relationships. NBC executives reportedly panicked during filming. There were serious fears about how audiences, especially viewers in the South, would react once the episode aired. People behind the scenes worried the backlash could be enormous. But something unexpected happened. After the episode aired, the network was flooded with fan mail, and most of it was overwhelmingly positive. Instead of outrage, many viewers celebrated what they had seen. Later on, Nichols spoke about the massive attention the kiss received with a sense of amusement. To her, the fascination surrounding interracial relationships felt ironic considering her own deeply mixed ancestry, which included Egyptian, Ethiopian, Moorish, Spanish, Welsh, Cherokee, and several other backgrounds blended together across generations. Still, as historic as that television moment became, it was only one chapter in Nichelle Nichols's larger legacy. After Star Trek, the original series was canceled by NBC in 1969, Nichelle Nichols suddenly found herself at a crossroads. Like many actors coming off a cult television show, she had to figure out what came next. At first, she continued acting. She picked up smaller television roles in shows like Insight and The DA, and in 1974, she appeared in the blaxploitation film Truck Turner, playing a madam. But while Hollywood kept her somewhat busy, Nichols was already starting to focus her energy on something much bigger than acting. During the 1970s, she became deeply involved in activism, education, and science outreach. In 1975, she founded a company called Women in Motion, Inc., an organization focused on educational programs centered around science, technology, and space exploration. Before long, the company began securing government contracts, putting Nichols in direct collaboration with major national initiatives tied to science education. Then came 1976, a year that completely strengthened her connection to the world of space exploration. That year, NASA officially unveiled its first space shuttle orbiter. The spacecraft was named Enterprise, a decision heavily influenced by passionate Star Trek fans who had campaigned relentlessly for the name. Even President Gerald Ford reportedly supported the choice. Because of her role as Uhura, Nichols received a special invitation to attend the naming ceremony, alongside much of the original Star Trek cast. In many ways, the event symbolized something remarkable. A science fiction series that once imagined humanity exploring the stars was now directly inspiring real-world space exploration. But Nichols's relationship with NASA was only just beginning. That same year, she was invited to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, where she witnessed one of the most historic moments in space exploration history: the landing of the Viking 1 probe on Mars. Standing among scientists and engineers inside Mission Control, Nichols became one of the first people on Earth to see live images transmitted back from the Martian surface. For someone who had spent years portraying a space officer on television, the experience must have felt surreal. Science fiction and reality were suddenly colliding right in front of her eyes. Although Nichols never traveled into outer space herself, she still managed to get remarkably close to that experience. Years later, she flew aboard Sophia, a highly modified Boeing 747 equipped with a giant infrared telescope. Nichols loved the experience and often spoke about how much the aircraft reminded her of the Starship Enterprise. To her, Sophia represented humanity's constant desire to explore what still remained unknown. By 1977, Nichols's role in the space community had grown even larger. She was appointed to the board of directors for the National Space Institute, a civilian advocacy group dedicated to supporting space exploration. That same year, she delivered a speech at one of the organization's annual meetings that immediately grabbed attention. Nichols openly criticized the overwhelming lack of women and minorities within America's astronaut program. She challenged NASA to stop limiting its search for talent to the same narrow groups of people, arguing that the next scientific genius could easily be a black woman who simply had never been given the opportunity. The speech hit hard. As fate would have it, several top NASA officials were sitting in the audience that day. Instead of reacting defensively, they were impressed by her passion and her ability to connect with people. Soon afterward, NASA approached Nichols with a major request. They wanted her to help recruit astronauts for the brand-new Space Shuttle program. She accepted immediately. Before long, Nichols was traveling non-stop across the country. She visited schools, colleges, professional organizations, and government events, speaking directly to women and minorities who had rarely been encouraged to pursue careers in science or aerospace. She also appeared on major television programs, using her fame to convince people that space exploration was not reserved for a select few. For Nichols, the mission felt deeply personal. She believed qualified women and minorities needed to understand that opportunities at NASA were finally becoming real, and that participating in this new era of space travel carried historical importance. Her work ended up changing NASA forever. According to later accounts, NASA originally approached Nichols because the agency recognized a serious diversity problem within its astronaut corps. Through Women in Motion, Inc., Nichols helped launch recruitment campaigns specifically designed to reach people who had traditionally been overlooked by the space program. NASA even incorporated footage from Star Trek into some of its recruitment materials, directly connecting Uhura's fictional future to America's real one. The results were extraordinary. Among the astronauts recruited during this effort were Guion Stewart Bluford Jr. and Ron McNair, who became the first two Black American men to travel into orbit. But perhaps the most famous recruit connected to Nichols's efforts was Sally Ride. In 1983, Sally Ride made history as the first American woman to travel into space. Years later, it also became publicly known that Ride had been part of the LGBTQ+ community, making her the first known astronaut from that community as well. By that point, Nichelle Nichols' legacy had grown far beyond television. She had not only helped inspire people to dream about the future through Star Trek, she had directly helped shape who would actually get the chance to build it. The disturbing final chapter. By 2015, Nichelle Nichols was already in her 80s, but the woman who had inspired generations through Star Trek, the original series, was suddenly facing a new and deeply personal battle. That year, Nichols suffered a mild stroke at her home in Los Angeles. News of the medical emergency quickly spread after her agent, Zach McGinnis, shared an update with fans online, explaining that doctors were still trying to determine the severity of the stroke. Thankfully, the early reports brought some relief. Nichols was awake, able to speak normally, eating, and reportedly staying in good spirits. While there were signs of reduced mobility on her right side, there was no indication of paralysis. Fans across the world rallied behind her, flooding social media with support for the woman many still saw as Lieutenant Uhura. But sadly, the health struggles did not end there. A few years later, Nichols was diagnosed with dementia. According to doctors involved in her care, she showed significant issues with short-term memory, along with moderate difficulties involving time, place, abstract thinking, and recall. At the same time, many parts of her mind still remained remarkably strong. Reports indicated that her long-term memory, communication skills, concentration, and ability to recognize familiar people were largely intact. And that was when her life entered one of its most painful and controversial chapters. The legal fight surrounding Nichols' conservatorship eventually exploded into public view. But the roots of the conflict stretched back years earlier, all the way to 2010. That was when a man named Gilbert Bell, who had become Nichols' manager, moved into the guest house on her property. According to reports, the two had first met in 2009 during a lunch meeting at a P.F. Chang's restaurant and quickly formed a close relationship. Soon after, Bell began helping manage her career, booking convention appearances, film projects, and television opportunities. Bell later claimed that Nichols herself encouraged him to move onto the property after he sold his home, believing it would help them work more efficiently together. And financially, there were signs that her career had indeed become far more active under his management. Convention appearances became a major source of income. Bell reportedly increased her schedule from just a handful of events each year to multiple appearances every month. Smaller conventions could reportedly bring in tens of thousands of dollars, while major events paid substantially more. Bell claimed Nichols' yearly income eventually climbed into the hundreds of thousands, but not everyone agreed with his version of events. Nichols' son, Kyle Johnson, strongly disputed many of Bell's financial claims and criticized the records surrounding his management of her finances. At the same time, Nichols' health was beginning to deteriorate more seriously. In early 2013, she was hospitalized with severe pancreatitis. According to Johnson, years of heavy drinking had contributed to the crisis. Bell also pointed to alcohol as a major issue affecting her health and career during that period. But Nichols reportedly resisted efforts to seek treatment or rehabilitation programs. While she was hospitalized, another important figure entered the story: Angelique Fawcett. Fawcett and her husband, filmmaker Stephen Fawcett, had originally met Nichols while working on a Star Trek parody film called Unbelievable. According to the couple, Nichols' condition during her hospitalization became extremely serious. Angelique later described moments when Nichols appeared weak, disoriented, and seemingly caught between consciousness and confusion. After weeks in the hospital, Nichols was eventually transferred to a rehabilitation facility. But according to Belle, she hated being there and attempted to leave multiple times. Eventually, Belle removed her from the facility and brought her back home, despite medical advice warning against it, and without approval from her family. That same day, Nichols signed major legal documents, including an advance health care directive and a general power of attorney. Both documents gave Belle enormous authority over her medical decisions and financial affairs, while Angelique Fawcett was listed as a backup agent. Then came a moment that would later become heavily debated. According to Fawcett, Nichols asked her to record a lengthy interview discussing her career, independence, and future plans. The footage, later referred to as Nichelle's own words, showed Nichols reflecting on her life and expressing a strong desire to continue working, despite pressure from family members to slow down. In the recordings, Nichols sometimes appeared sharp and fully aware. Other moments, however, showed her repeating herself or drifting off topic, which later fueled even more questions about her mental condition during that period. Despite the growing health concerns, Nichols kept working. She continued appearing at conventions, accepted film projects, and even landed a role on The Young and the Restless. Belle credited himself for helping stabilize both her career and personal life, claiming he helped remove alcohol from the equation while rebuilding her professional schedule. Over time, though, the relationship between manager, caregiver, business partner, and close companion became increasingly blurred. After Nichols's 2015 stroke, Belle reportedly took on even more responsibility, helping organize caregivers, therapists, assistants, and daily care arrangements. Those close to Nichols described the relationship as deeply personal and emotionally intertwined. But not everyone around Nichols trusted Belle. Angelique Fawcett later described him as a gatekeeper who tightly controlled access to the actress. According to her, visiting Nichols often required going through Belle first, something that created growing tension between people in Nichols' inner circle. Fawcett also claimed Nichols's home had fallen into terrible condition over the years. At one point, she reportedly discovered the actress's closet nearly empty shortly before her 85th birthday celebration. Concerned by what she was seeing, Fawcett reached out to Nichols's younger sister, Marion, hoping the family would intervene more directly. Meanwhile, Belle and Fawcett both claimed that Kyle Johnson was largely absent during much of this period, while Johnson maintained that he regularly traveled to Los Angeles to help care for his mother and manage issues around the house. Then the situation escalated dramatically. According to reports, Belle eventually revealed that he wanted to marry Nichols. Belle later described the idea as more of a business arrangement designed to protect her finances rather than a traditional romantic relationship. That revelation alarmed several people close to Nichols. By early 2018, tensions inside her circle had reached a breaking point. A few months later, Johnson formally petitioned the court for a conservatorship over his mother's affairs. In the filing, he argued that Nichols was suffering from severe short-term memory loss that had significantly damaged her ability to make sound decisions. Johnson also accused unnamed individuals of exerting unhealthy influence over her life. One of the biggest triggers behind the legal filing involved Nichols's home. According to Johnson, Belle had used his power of attorney in 2017 to transfer ownership of the property into his own name. At nearly the same time, Nichols officially received her dementia diagnosis, adding even more complexity to the legal battle over who should control her care, finances, and future decisions. Once the petition reached probate court, Belle's power of attorney was suspended, and ownership of the house was transferred back into Nichols's name. Johnson then moved to Los Angeles full-time to care for his mother directly. According to him, he worked aggressively to organize convention appearances and restore her financial stability after discovering serious money problems. But the courtroom fight was far from over. In August 2018, Angelique Fawcett challenged Johnson's conservatorship petition in court. She argued that Nichols still had enough mental capacity to manage her affairs with some assistance, and accused Johnson of being motivated by financial interests connected to Nichols's estate and career earnings. Johnson responded by accusing Fawcett of trying to profit from Nichols's fame herself. As the legal battle intensified, the courts cycled through several temporary conservators. Eventually, licensed fiduciary Noreen Bamer briefly managed Nichols's affairs before another conservator, B.J. Hawkins, took over temporarily. Ultimately, Kyle Johnson was named permanent conservator. According to later reports, Nichols's life changed dramatically once Johnson assumed control. Her longtime Woodland Hills home was sold for roughly $2.2 million, and she was relocated to a rental property in New Mexico. Johnson declined to publicly explain many of the details behind the move, but for some of Nichols's friends, the decision felt devastating. To people close to her, that house represented far more than property. Nichols had personally helped design it, shape the land around it, and build it into the home she dreamed of for years. Losing it, especially late in life and against her stated wishes, became one of the saddest symbols of the entire conservatorship battle. But as the conservatorship battle surrounding Nichelle grew uglier, things took an even darker turn when disturbing footage of the actress and her son, Kyle Johnson, leaked publicly through CBS 46 Atlanta. The video was difficult for many fans to watch. Before Johnson even entered the room, Nichols could already be seen visibly distressed, angrily insisting that she never agreed to having a conservatorship placed over her life and claiming she did not fully understand what was happening around her. But the moment Johnson stepped into the room, the tension exploded. The footage showed Nichols becoming increasingly emotional as Johnson repeatedly told her she was going home with him. Nichols pushed back fiercely, shouting accusations at her son and demanding that he stop touching her. The confrontation quickly spread online, shocking longtime fans who had spent decades viewing Nichols as the poised and commanding Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek, the original series. The video became so alarming that the Los Angeles Police Department was reportedly contacted. However, authorities ultimately decided not to open a formal investigation. For Angelique Fawcett, the footage felt deeply unsettling. She later explained that, despite knowing Nichols and her son had a complicated relationship for years, she had never heard Nichols scream with that level of fear or anger before. At the same time, Fawcett argued that many people misunderstood Nichols's condition. According to her, Nichols struggled primarily with short-term memory loss, but was not detached from reality or suffering from major delusions. In Fawcett's view, Nichols still understood much of what was happening around her. Still, the leaked footage created uncomfortable questions for everyone involved. It did not just cast Johnson in a negative light. Many people also criticized Gilbert Bell for releasing such emotionally charged footage involving an elderly woman suffering from dementia, especially given concerns over whether Nichols was truly capable of consenting to the video being made public in the first place. The entire situation also highlighted one of the most painful realities surrounding dementia and conservatorships. Many patients strongly resist losing control over their own lives, even when family members or courts believe intervention has become necessary. Watching personal independence slowly disappear can create fear, confusion, and intense emotional outbursts, something that became painfully visible in Nichols's case. And behind all the emotional conflict sat an even bigger issue: money. Court-appointed temporary conservator B.J. Hawkins later examined Nichols's finances and reportedly uncovered what appeared to be a financial disaster. According to her analysis, there were questionable contracts, missing funds, growing debt, and evidence suggesting other people had long been controlling Nichols's finances without clear proof they were acting in her best interests. Hawkins also expressed serious concerns about Johnson himself. In depositions, she reportedly described him as prone to angry outbursts and admitted she had reservations about whether he could truly handle the responsibility of serving as conservator. That carried significant weight coming from Hawkins because she generally believed family members were usually the best option for those roles whenever possible. Meanwhile, Angelique Fawcett continued fighting publicly on Nichols's behalf. According to reports, she formally challenged Johnson's financial accounting in court and argued that Nichols had been relocated against her wishes. Fawcett claimed the actress deeply loved her longtime home and had no desire to move into a much smaller living arrangement. She also worried Nichols was becoming increasingly isolated from longtime friends and supporters. But despite those concerns, the courts ultimately ruled that Fawcett lacked the legal standing necessary to continue pursuing the case. Even after losing in court, Fawcett continued speaking out. She publicly argued that Nichols was still capable of managing many parts of her own life with limited assistance, and maintained that Johnson was not acting in his mother's best interests. Fawcett later described Nichols as being like a second mother to her, but after she publicly criticized the conservatorship situation and discussed the leaked video, she was reportedly cut off from seeing Nichols again. Gilbert Bell was eventually barred from visiting Nichols as well after April 2019. From that point forward, Johnson became her primary caregiver while living with her in New Mexico, far removed from many of the people who had once surrounded her life and career. Then, in 2020, the battle escalated once again. Johnson filed a major lawsuit against Bell, accusing him of financial elder abuse. The lawsuit claimed Bell had spent years exploiting his close relationship with Nichols in order to gain control over her finances, assets, and personal affairs. According to the filing, Bell allegedly siphoned money from Nichols's convention earnings, mishandled her finances, and manipulated business arrangements for his own benefit. The lawsuit also accused Bell of using his position to secure highly favorable rental agreements while living on Nichols's property, reportedly paying only a few $100s a month in rent over several years. Even more seriously, Johnson alleged Bell pressured Nichols into taking out a reverse mortgage on her home worth more than $400,000. The lawsuit also focused heavily on a 2017 incident in which Bell allegedly used his power of attorney to transfer ownership of Nichols's house into his own name through a quitclaim deed. Bell's attorney strongly denied the accusations. He described Bell as a longtime entertainment manager and close friend who had genuinely cared for Nichols for years. He also pointed out that court-appointed conservators had not officially concluded that Bell committed financial wrongdoing. Still, Johnson remained adamant that Bell's influence had devastated his mother financially and emotionally. He later admitted publicly that the entire situation was something he never imagined his family would face, especially as Nichols became increasingly vulnerable due to age and dementia. At the time, Bell was reportedly still living on Nichols's Southern California property, though he was no longer involved in her care. As for Nichols herself, Johnson said that despite her dementia, her overall physical health remained relatively stable. Aside from arthritis and the normal aches that came with old age, she was reportedly still physically strong for someone approaching her late 80s. But unlike another famous conservatorship battle unfolding around the same time, Nichols's story would never reach a moment where she fully regained her independence. On July 30th, 2022, Nichelle Nichols passed away at the age of 89. Nichelle Nichols almost quit Star Trek after the first season. Back in 1967, Star Trek was still trying to find its footing. The reviews for the show's first season were shaky, And, behind the scenes, Nichelle Nichols was quietly reaching a breaking point of her own. Nichols, who played Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, had become one of the most recognizable faces on television. But while audiences were slowly warming up to the futuristic world of Star Trek, she was dealing with frustrations that ran far deeper than bad press. The show's creator, Gene Roddenberry, had built Star Trek around an ambitious idea. At a time when America was deeply divided by racism, segregation, and social unrest, he wanted to imagine a future where people from every background worked together as equals. The bridge of the Enterprise was meant to symbolize that future. Different races, different cultures, men and women all standing side by side with mutual respect. For television in the 1960s, that was revolutionary. And right in the middle of that vision was Nichelle Nichols. But acting in a sci-fi television series had never been her ultimate dream. Nichols came from the world of live performance. She was a trained singer and dancer whose heart was rooted in theater. So when an opportunity opened up for her on Broadway near the end of Star Trek's first season, she seriously considered walking away from Hollywood altogether. There were plenty of reasons pushing her toward the exit. Some reports claimed she was frustrated by having many of her scenes and lines reduced or cut entirely. Others pointed to the racism she endured off-set, including stories that executives allegedly hid fan mail sent to her by viewers. There was also growing uncertainty within the cast after co-star Grace Lee Whitney was suddenly let go from the show. Nichols reportedly feared she could easily be next. In reality, it was likely all of those pressures piling up at once. By the end of Season 1, she made up her mind. According to her autobiography, she approached Gene Roddenberry and handed him her resignation. Roddenberry was stunned. He immediately tried convincing her to stay, reminding her how important Uhura was to the entire mission of Star Trek. To him, she wasn't just another cast member. She represented the future he was trying to show the world. Still, Nichols wasn't fully convinced. Before accepting her resignation, Roddenberry asked her for one thing: take the weekend to think it over. If she still wanted to leave by Monday, he promised he would let her go. What happened over that weekend would completely change the course of her life. Trying to clear her mind, Nichols attended a dinner event. While she was there, someone approached her and mentioned that a devoted fan was eager to meet her. Nichols assumed it was probably a child or a teenager excited about Star Trek, so she casually agreed. Then she turned around and froze. Standing just a few feet away from her was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For a moment, she could barely process what she was seeing. The legendary civil rights leader, a man she deeply admired, was standing there as a genuine fan of her work. King sat with her and explained how much Star Trek meant to him and his family. They watched the show faithfully, and Uhura's presence on television carried enormous meaning for them. To many Black viewers across America, she wasn't just another character in a science fiction series. She represented possibility. Nichols thanked him for his support, but then revealed something shocking. She was planning to leave the show. King's reaction was immediate. He told her she could not leave. He explained that what she was doing went far beyond entertainment. Uhura wasn't written as a maid, a servant, or a stereotype. Roles Black actors were often limited to during that era. She was intelligent, respected, professional, and equal to everyone else aboard the Enterprise. For the first time, millions of people were seeing a Black woman portrayed that way on television. King made it clear that her role carried enormous cultural weight. He told her that if she walked away, the industry could easily erase that progress by replacing her with someone else and pretending the breakthrough had never happened. What Nichols had achieved, he explained, would only truly matter if she stayed. The conversation hit her deeply. Years later, Nichols would describe that moment as one of the greatest experiences of her entire life. Hearing those words from Martin Luther King Jr. himself completely shifted her perspective. He wasn't simply encouraging her career. He was showing her the larger impact she was having on history. By the time the weekend ended, her decision had changed. Nichols returned to Gene Roddenberry and told him everything that had happened. The moment he realized she was staying, he was overjoyed. According to Nichols, Roddenberry immediately tore up her resignation letter right in front of her. That single decision would shape the rest of her career. Nichols stayed with Star Trek through the remainder of the original series, later returned for the animated series, and went on to appear in several Star Trek films across the following decades. But her influence stretched far beyond Hollywood. After Star Trek ended, Nichols eventually began working alongside NASA, helping recruit women and minorities into the space program, inspiring an entirely new generation of astronauts, scientists, and engineers. What almost became a quiet exit from television, instead, became one of the most important moments in entertainment history.